A man stands in the snow with a gun to his head. He's waited 12 years for this moment, 12 years of silence, grief, and frozen mountains. His finger tightens on the trigger. Then a scream tears through the blizzard. A woman's scream, desperate, dying. And suddenly, the man who wanted nothing but death faces an impossible choice. Pull the trigger and end it all, or step back into the storm one last time. What happens next will change everything. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The cabin smelled like sawdust and regret. Elijah Vance sat at his workbench in the amber glow of a kerosene lamp, hand steady despite the revolver resting beside an unfinished music box. Outside, wind screamed through the pines like something wounded. February in the Rockies didn't whisper. It howled. He'd chosen tonight because the storm would cover everything. No one would find him until spring, maybe longer. Up here, 12 miles from the nearest trading post, a man could disappear completely. He'd been disappearing for years anyway, one day at a time. The music box sat incomplete. Maplewood, brass gears, a cylinder he'd spent 3 weeks etching with a melody he'd never hear play. He made them for no reason now. 27 boxes lined the shelves, each one wound tight, each one silent. He used to make them for Sarah. She'd loved the way the mechanisms clicked into place, the way songs materialized from metal and wood like magic. But Sarah had been dead for 12 years. Anna too. His daughter. 4 years old when the fever took her, then Sarah a week later. He'd buried them both in town, then walked into these mountains and never walked back out. Elijah picked up the revolver. Colt Single Action Army, .45 caliber. Heavy, honest weight. He'd cleaned it that morning, oiled the cylinder, loaded 6 rounds. No half measures. He wasn't the type to leave things unfinished, except the music boxes. Those he left silent. His hands didn't shake. 42 years old and his hands still worked fine, scarred, calloused, but steady. Everything else had worn down. His beard had gone gray. His eyes didn't focus right anymore. Some mornings he woke up and forgot where he was, forgot why the bed felt so empty. Tonight he wouldn't forget anything. Tonight was clarity. He stood, chair scraping against rough floorboards. The cabin was small. One room, stone fireplace, a bed he'd built himself. Everything here he'd built himself. He'd needed the work, needed his hands busy so his mind couldn't catch up. But eventually the work ran out. Eventually the silence got too loud. Elijah walked to the window. Snow fell in thick curtains, erasing the world. Visibility maybe 20 feet. Wind rattled the shutters. This storm had been building for 2 days. The kind that buried entire valleys, killed cattle, trapped travelers. Dangerous, brutal, perfect. He raised the revolver. The metal was cold against his temple. He'd thought about this moment so many times it felt rehearsed. Finger on the trigger, slow breath. Don't think, just do. Same as field dressing a deer, same as splitting wood. Commit to the action and see it through. His reflection stared back from the dark window. Gaunt face, hollow eyes, a ghost wearing his skin. "I'm sorry," he whispered. To Sarah, to Anna, to the man he used to be. He closed his eyes, pulled the trigger. The scream cut through the storm like a knife through canvas, sharp, desperate, human. His finger froze. The hammer didn't fall. For 3 seconds, Elijah stood paralyzed, revolver pressed to his skull, brain trying to process what he'd heard. The wind, probably. Mountain storms played tricks. He'd heard voices before, phantom sounds that weren't there. Then it came again. "Help!" A woman's voice, raw with terror. Elijah lowered the gun slowly, like waking from a dream. He turned toward the door. The scream came from outside, somewhere past the tree line. Distance was hard to judge in a blizzard, but close enough to hear meant close enough to reach, or close enough to die trying. His first thought was simple, not my problem. He'd cut himself off from the world for a reason. Whatever was happening out there, accident, bandits, stupidity, it had nothing to do with him. He'd made his choice. Tonight was the night. Some stranger's bad luck didn't change that. He raised the revolver again. "Please, someone!" The voice was weakening. Whoever she was, she wouldn't last long. Hypothermia worked fast. 10 minutes in this cold, maybe 15. Elijah's jaw clenched. His finger trembled on the trigger. He thought about Sarah, About the night Anna got sick and they'd ridden through a storm worse than this one, desperate to reach the doctor in town. They'd made it. Barely. If someone had heard them, if someone had helped— "God damn it," Elijah growled. He slammed the revolver down on the workbench and grabbed his coat. The cold hit him like a fist when he opened the door. Wind tore at his clothes, snow burning his face. He pulled his hat low and pushed into the storm, rifle slung across his back, lantern gripped tight. The light barely penetrated 3 feet. "Where are you?" he shouted. Nothing. Just wind. He moved toward where he thought the sound had come from, northeast, downslope toward the old supply road. His boots sank deep with every step. The world was white noise and darkness. "Call out!" he roared. Silence. He kept walking. Stupid. This was stupid. Whoever was out here was probably already dead, and now he'd die too, frozen in a ditch looking for a corpse. Perfect. He'd wanted to die tonight anyway. Except now it felt different. Dying alone in his cabin was a choice. Dying out here was just waste. 20 yards. 50. The tree line opened up and the wind got worse. He squinted against the snow, sweeping the lantern left and right. Then he saw it. Wreckage. Dark shapes half buried in drifts. A stagecoach, overturned. One wheel still spinning slowly. Bodies scattered around it like broken dolls. Elijah's stomach turned. He'd seen death before. War did that to a man. But it never got easier. He approached slowly, rifle ready. Could be bandits waiting in ambush. Could be— A hand moved, small, pale, reaching up from beneath the coach. Elijah lunged forward, dropped to his knees. A woman, pinned under the wreckage, snow already covering her like a burial shroud. Her eyes were open, unfocused, lips blue. "I got you," Elijah said, though he wasn't sure she could hear. He set down the lantern and rifle, braced his shoulder under the coach frame. The wood was frozen, heavy. He pushed. Muscles screamed. The frame shifted an inch, 2 inches. "Come on, you bastard," he hissed. The coach lifted. The woman didn't move. "Crawl," Elijah shouted. "Now!" Nothing. She was too far gone. He adjusted his stance, pushed harder. The frame rose another few inches. Enough. He grabbed her arm with one hand, kept pressure on the coach with his shoulder, and dragged her free. The moment she cleared, he let go, and the wreckage slammed back down. She wasn't breathing right. Shallow, irregular gasps. Elijah checked the other bodies quickly. 4 men. All dead. Driver, guard, 2 passengers. Throats cut, pockets turned out. Not an accident. Bandits had hit them, probably hours ago. The woman stirred, eyes rolling. "Don't talk," Elijah said. "Save your strength." He stripped his coat off and wrapped her in it, then lifted her over his shoulder. Light as kindling. City woman, probably. Soft hands, fine clothes under the blood and dirt. Wrong place, wrong time. The walk back was hell. Wind fought him for every step. Snow piled up faster than he could push through it. Twice he nearly lost his footing. The woman didn't make a sound. By the time he kicked open his cabin door, his lungs burned and his legs were numb. He laid her on the bed, stoked the fire until it roared, then grabbed every blanket he owned and piled them on top of her. Her skin was ice, pulse thready, frostbite on her fingers. "Don't you die," Elijah muttered, peeling off her frozen boots. "Not after I just—" He stopped himself. After he— just what? Saved her. He hadn't saved anyone. He'd delayed his own end by a few hours, that's all. But her chest kept rising and falling, barely. Each breath a fight. Elijah heated water, made her drink when she could, rubbed circulation back into her hands and feet. She drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling things he couldn't understand. Names, maybe. Warnings. Hours passed. The storm raged. He kept the fire burning, kept checking her pulse, kept waiting for her to either wake up or stop breathing. Dawn came gray and dim through the window. The woman's eyes opened. She stared at the ceiling for a long moment, confused. Then her gaze found him sitting across the room, rifle across his knees. "Who?" Her voice was a rasp. "Elijah, this is my cabin. Found you in the wreckage last night." She tried to sit up, winced, fell back. "The others?" "Dead." Her face crumpled. Not surprise. Confirmation. "They were waiting for us," she whispered. "On the road. 3 men." They killed the driver first, then— Save it, Elijah interrupted. You need rest. They'll come back. He frowned. Who? Theodore's men. They weren't bandits, they were hunting me. Elijah stood slowly. Explain. The woman closed her eyes. My name is Clara Whitlock. Theodore Harlan sent those men to bring me back. When the driver wouldn't stop, they killed everyone. Why does Harlan want you? Because I ran. She looked at him then, really looked. And because he thinks he owns me. Elijah felt something cold settle in his chest. Not fear. Something older. Owns you. I was engaged to him. Arranged by my father. Theodore is— She swallowed. He's powerful, rich, connected. When I refused to marry him, he what? He locked me in his estate. Said I'd learn obedience. I escaped 3 weeks ago. Been running ever since. Elijah was quiet for a long time. Outside, the wind howled. How'd you end up on that coach? He finally asked. Bought passage in Denver. Thought if I could reach California, disappear into a city. She laughed bitterly. Stupid. You made it pretty far. Not far enough. Elijah walked to the window, snow still falling. The road would be impassable for days, maybe a week, which meant if Harlan's men were still out there, they weren't going anywhere either. Those men you mentioned, he said. They dead too? I don't know. Everything happened so fast. They shot the guard, cut the driver's throat. One of them grabbed me. I fought. The coach went over the edge. She touched her head, wincing. I don't remember hitting the ground. You got lucky. Lucky. The word sounded bitter in her mouth. Elijah turned back to her. Storm's not letting up. You're stuck here till it does. After that, you go your own way. And if Theodore's men are still looking, not my concern. Clara stared at him. You saved my life. I pulled you out of the snow. Don't make it more than it is. Why'd you come out at all? In that storm, middle of the night? No one does that unless what? She studied his face, the hollow eyes, the set of his jaw. Unless they've got nothing to lose. Elijah's expression didn't change. Get some rest, Miss Whitlock. We'll figure out the rest when you can walk. He grabbed his coat and headed for the door. Where are you going? Clara asked. Check the wreckage. See if there's anything worth salvaging. In this weather? Storm's all I know. He stepped outside before she could respond. The cold felt good, clearer. The conversation had stirred things he'd buried deep, and he didn't like it. This woman, Clara, she was a complication, a problem. He should have left her in the snow, but he hadn't. And now she was in his cabin, wrapped in his blankets, looking at him like he was something more than a man waiting to die. Elijah trudged through the drifts toward the crash site. Bodies were buried now, shapeless mounds. He'd deal with them later. For now, he searched the wreckage, found a satchel, some supplies, a lockbox that had been pried open and emptied. Then he found the tracks, boot prints, recent enough that the snow hadn't filled them completely. 3 sets, leading away from the wreckage, heading south. Harlan's men. Still alive. Elijah crouched, studying the trail. They'd left in a hurry, probably assumed Clara was dead. But if they came back to check, if they saw smoke from his chimney, he straightened. This was exactly the kind of trouble he didn't need. The smart move was to throw Clara out, let her take her chances. She wasn't his responsibility. But he thought about those cutthroats, about men who'd murder a stagecoach full of people just to retrieve one woman. He thought about the revolver sitting on his workbench. God damn it, he muttered again. Back at the cabin, Clara was sitting up, blankets wrapped around her shoulders. She looked stronger already. Young, maybe 25. Dark hair, sharp features. The kind of face that probably turned heads in drawing rooms. Out here, she just looked lost. Did you find them? She asked. Tracks. 3 men, heading south. They're alive. Her face went pale. They'll come back. Maybe. Not maybe. Theodore doesn't accept failure. He'll send more if these 3 don't finish the job. Elijah poured himself coffee from the pot over the fire. It was bitter, days old. How long were you running before the stagecoach? 3 weeks? Changed coaches 4 times, used different names.
Thought I'd covered my tracks. She laughed shakily. I was wrong. Rich men have long arms.
You know the type? I know enough. He sat down, rifle within reach. Always within reach. What's Harlan do, besides collect women? Steal, railroads, politics. He owns half of Denver and the other half owes him favors. Clara's hands clenched around the blanket. My father sold me to him like cattle. Business merger dressed up as marriage. Your father's still alive? Yes? You know you ran? She was quiet, then. He told Theodore where to find me.
Elijah absorbed that. Family's complicated. Family's a cage. She met his eyes. Why do you live up here alone? Not your business. You made my problems your business when you pulled me out of that snow. I made a mistake. Did you? He didn't answer. Outside, wind battered the cabin. The fire crackled. Clara watched him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. How long have you been up here? She asked. Long enough. Hiding from something? Hiding from everything. She nodded slowly. I understand that. No, you don't. His voice came out harder than intended. You're running from one man. I'm running from... He stopped. Doesn't matter. It matters to you. Elijah stood abruptly. You need food. I'll make something. He busied himself with supplies, salt pork, beans, hard bread. Cooking gave him something to do with his hands. Clara didn't push, just sat there watching the fire. After a while, she spoke again, quieter this time. When I was in Theodore's house, locked in that room, I used to imagine what I'd do if I got out, where I'd go, who I'd be. She paused. I thought about dying too. Easier than fighting. Elijah's hands stilled. But I didn't, Clara continued, because dying meant he won. Meant my whole life amounted to nothing but a transaction between men. He set the pan down carefully. Why are you telling me this?
Because last night, when you came into that storm, you didn't look like a man who wanted to live. You looked like a man who'd already made peace with dying. Elijah turned slowly. You're guessing. Am I? Their eyes met. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Clara said very softly, Thank you for choosing the storm instead. Something cracked in Elijah's chest. Small, painful. He turned back to the stove. Food will be ready soon. They ate in silence. Clara managed a few bites before exhaustion claimed her again. Elijah helped her back to the bed, then sat by the fire, rifle across his lap, watching the door. The tracks outside meant Harlan's men were still out there. Wounded, probably. Desperate. They'd hole up until the storm passed, then come looking, which meant he had maybe 2 days to figure out what came next. He could turn Clara out. Let her take her chances on the road. Not his problem, not his fight. But he'd seen what Harlan's men did to that stagecoach driver. Seen the bodies left in the snow like trash. And something about that made him angry. A slow, cold anger he hadn't felt in years. He looked at the revolver on the workbench, at the unfinished music box beside it. 12 years he'd been ready to die. 12 years of silence and sawdust and waiting for the courage to pull the trigger. Then one scream in the dark. And here he was, alive, angry, trapped in a cabin with a stranger who'd looked at him and seen straight through to the truth. Hell, Elijah muttered. Outside, the storm screamed on, and somewhere in the white, 3 men waited. The storm didn't break for 3 days. Elijah woke before dawn on the second morning to find Clara already awake, sitting up in bed and staring at the frost patterns on the window. Her face looked better, color returning, eyes clearer. The frostbite on her fingers had turned an angry red, but nothing blackened. She'd keep all 10. You sleep at all? He asked. She turned. Some. You? Enough. That was a lie. He dozed in the chair by the fire, rifle across his lap, jerking awake every time the wind shifted or a branch cracked under snow. Old habits. In the war, sleeping too deep got you killed. Clara pulled the blankets tighter. It's colder this morning. Storm settling in. Could last another week. A week. She said it like a prison sentence. Elijah stood, joints protesting. His back hurt. Too many nights in chairs, too many years of mountain living wearing him down.
He fed the fire, put coffee on, tried not to think about how small the cabin felt with another person in it. "You got family besides your father?" he asked. Conversation just to fill silence. "A brother, James. He's in Boston, I think. We haven't spoken in years." "Why not?" "He took father's side. Said I was being childish, that marriage to Theodore was a good match." Her voice went flat. "Said I should be grateful." Elijah poured coffee. "Men love telling women what to be grateful for." Clara looked at him sharply, something in his tone. "You were married," she said. Not a question. He didn't answer right away. The coffee was too hot, burned his tongue. "Long time ago?" "What happened?" "She died." The words came out blunt, final. Clara had the sense not to push. She accepted the coffee he handed her, wrapped both hands around the cup. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. Elijah grunted. Sorry didn't bring anyone back. They drank in silence. Outside, snow continued its relentless fall. The cabin felt like the only solid thing in the world, everything else just white noise and wind. "I need to check the perimeter," Elijah said eventually. "Make sure those tracks didn't circle back. I'll come with you." "No. I'm not staying here alone. You can barely walk." Clara stood, wobbled, caught herself on the bed frame. "I can walk fine." She couldn't. Her legs shook and her face went pale with the effort. But there was steel in her jaw, same determination he'd seen in soldiers who wouldn't admit they were dying. "Stubborn," Elijah muttered. "Practical. If those men come while you're gone, I'm defenseless." She had a point. He pulled a spare coat from the chest, too big for her but warmer than what she'd been wearing. "Stay close. Fall behind, and I leave you." "Liar." He almost smiled. Almost. The cold outside was vicious. Clara gasped when it hit her lungs, but she didn't complain. Elijah led the way, moving slow enough that she could keep up, following the tree line in a wide arc around the cabin. The tracks he'd found before were buried now under fresh snow. No new ones. Either Harlan's men had moved on, or they were holed up somewhere waiting out the storm. Both options bought time. "How far to the nearest town?" Clara asked, breath coming hard. 12 miles southeast, trading post, couple dozen people, not much." "Would they help? If Theodore's men show up?" "Depends. Harlan got money?" "More than most people see in a lifetime." "Then no, they won't help." Clara's shoulders sagged. "So we're alone." "We're always alone. Just took you 25 years to figure it out." She shot him a look. "You're a real comfort, you know that?" "Didn't pull you out of the snow to comfort you. Pulled you out so you wouldn't die." "Why? Why does it matter to you if I live or die?" Elijah stopped walking, turned to face her. Snow caught in her dark hair, melting on her cheeks. She looked young and angry and lost. "It doesn't," he said. "Then why?" "Because I heard you scream and I—" He cut himself off. "Doesn't matter. You're here now. Storm breaks, you leave. Simple." "Nothing about this is simple." She was right, but he didn't want to admit it. He started walking again. They made a full circuit of the cabin, found nothing, headed back inside. Clara collapsed into the chair by the fire, exhausted. Elijah pulled out supplies, dried meat, beans, flour. Enough for maybe 2 weeks if they rationed. "Can you cook?" he asked. "Badly. Better than nothing." He showed her how to work the stove, how to stretch the beans with water and salt pork fat. She watched carefully, asked questions. Her hands were clumsy at first, but she learned fast. By midday, they had something resembling stew. It tasted like sadness and salt, but it was hot. "My mother used to cook," Clara said, staring into her bowl. "Before she died. Father hired staff after that. I never learned." "How old were you?" 13? Elijah nodded. Loss at that age left marks. "What was her name?" Clara asked. "Your wife." He didn't want to answer, didn't want to crack open that door. But something about the cabin, the storm, the strange intimacy of survival made it hard to keep everything locked down. "Sarah," he said finally. "How long were you married?" 8 years. "Children?" His jaw tightened. "A daughter, Anna." Clara went very still. "Both of them?" "Fever. Anna first, then Sarah a week later." "Nothing I could do." So sorry. You already said that. I mean it more now. Elijah stood abruptly, carried his bowl to the basin. Past is past. Doesn't change anything. But Clara was watching him with those sharp eyes, seeing too much. Is that why you came up here? To the mountain? I came up here to be left alone. You came up here to disappear. Same thing. No, Clara said quietly. It's not.
He turned on her. You don't know me. Don't pretend you do. I know you had a gun to your head that night. I know you were ready to pull the trigger. And I know something stopped you. Yeah, you're screaming. No, you stopped yourself. The scream just gave you an excuse. Elijah felt anger rising, hot and defensive. You think you got me figured out? City woman running from her problems, thinking she understands. I understand wanting to die, Clara interrupted. Her voice was steady. I understand being so tired of fighting that giving up seems like mercy, so don't talk to me like I'm some naive child. They stared at each other across the small cabin. The fire crackled. Wind rattled the shutters. Elijah looked away first. We need more wood, he muttered. I'll go chop some. He grabbed the axe and went outside before she could respond. The cold helped. So did the work. He attacked the woodpile like it had personally wronged him, splitting logs with brutal efficiency. Sweat froze on his face. His shoulders burned. Good. Physical pain was simple, clean. When he came back inside an hour later, arms loaded with firewood, Clara had cleaned the dishes and was attempting to patch her torn dress with needle and thread she'd found in his supplies. You sew? He asked. Badly, she said again. Like I cook. He almost smiled, caught himself. They settled into an uneasy routine as the day wore on. Elijah worked on the unfinished music box, something to keep his hands busy. Clara watched, curious despite herself. What song is it? She asked. Doesn't have a name. Did you write it? Yeah. For your wife? His hands stilled on the gears. For my daughter. She liked music boxes. Clara was quiet for a moment. Will you play it when it's done? No. Why not? Because what's the point? She didn't have an answer for that. Night fell early. The storm intensified, wind howling like wolves. Elijah barricaded the door, checked the rifle, added extra wood to the fire. Clara watched his preparations with growing unease. You think they'll come tonight? She asked. No, storm's too bad, but better safe. You've done this before, prepared for attack. Everyone's done it before. You just haven't lived anywhere worth attacking. That's not what I mean. You were a soldier. It wasn't a question. Elijah considered lying, decided it wasn't worth the effort. Union Army, 4 years. Which battles? The ones that mattered and the ones that didn't. All of them bloody. Clara absorbed this. Is that where you learned to... She gestured vaguely. Be like this? Like what? Hard, careful, always watching. War teaches you the world wants you dead. Mountain just reinforces the lesson. That's a bleak way to live. It's the only way that works. She shook her head. I don't believe that. Believe what you want. Won't change reality. But Clara leaned forward, firelight catching her face. You saved me. That's not the action of a man who thinks the world is only death. I made a mistake. Stop saying that. It's true. No, the mistake would have been pulling that trigger. Everything after is you choosing to live. Elijah felt something dangerous stir in his chest. Hope, maybe. Or just fear wearing a different mask. You don't know what you're talking about, he said. Then explain it to me. There's nothing to explain. I'm a man waiting to die who got interrupted. Once you're gone, I'll finish what I started. Clara's face hardened. That's the most selfish thing I've ever heard. Selfish? Yes, selfish. You think you're the only person who's lost something? The only one who's suffered? I didn't say that. You're acting like it. Hiding up here, building music boxes for ghosts, planning your dramatic exit. It's all just self-pity dressed up as tragedy. Anger flared hot. You don't get to judge me. Why not? You've been judging me since I woke up. City woman, running from her problems, doesn't understand the real world. She stood, wobbled, steadied herself. At least I'm still fighting. At least I haven't given up. Fighting for what? You think running makes you brave? Braver than hiding. I'm not hiding. You've been hiding for 12 years. The words hit like a slap. Elijah stood, fists clenched. Get out.
It's a blizzard outside. I don't care. Get out of my cabin. Clara didn't move. No. I said, I heard you, and I'm not leaving. You can throw me out if you want, but I'm not walking out that door on my own. They faced each other across the fire. Elijah's heart hammered. Part of him wanted to grab her, physically force her outside. Part of him wanted to...
He didn't know what he wanted.
Why? He asked, voice rough.
Why does it matter to you what I do?
Clara's expression softened. Because you pulled me out of the snow. Because you didn't have to, but you did. Because somewhere under all this anger and grief, there's still a man who gives a damn. You're wrong. I don't think I am. Elijah turned away, stared into the fire. His hands shook. From cold or anger or something else, he couldn't tell. I can't, he said quietly. I can't do this. Can't care, can't hope, can't... I already lost everything once. I won't survive it again. Then don't survive alone. He looked at her, really looked. She was shaking too, from exhaustion or emotion or both. Dark circles under her eyes, bruises still visible on her throat. A woman who'd been hunted, who'd watched people die, who had every reason to be broken. But she was still standing.
The storm will break eventually, Clara said. When it does, I'll leave if you want me to. But until then, we're stuck together. So we can either spend that time fighting, or we can... She hesitated. We can try not to. Elijah wanted to argue, wanted to push her away, rebuild the walls he'd spent 12 years constructing. Instead, he said, You should sleep. Take the bed again. Where will you sleep? Chair's fine. Elijah, just sleep, Clara. She looked like she wanted to say more, but finally nodded. She climbed into the bed, pulled the blankets up. Within minutes, her breathing evened out. Elijah sat by the fire, rifle across his knees, and tried not to think about how right she was. The next day brought no relief from the storm. If anything, it worsened. Wind strong enough to shake the cabin walls, snow falling so thick it erased the world. They were trapped together in a space barely big enough for one person, let alone two. Clara woke stiff and sore but determined. She refused to spend another day sitting idle. Elijah showed her how to maintain the fire, how to melt snow for water, how to ration supplies. She learned quickly, asked smart questions. Why 12 miles from town? She asked while helping sort through dried goods. Why not closer? Closer means people. People ask questions, and you didn't want to answer, didn't want to talk at all. Do you go into town for supplies? Twice a year, spring and fall. That's it? That's enough. Clara shook her head. I can't imagine it, being alone that long. You get used to it. Or you go crazy. Maybe both. She almost laughed. Almost. By afternoon, they'd fallen into a rhythm, Elijah working on repairs to the cabin, Clara attempting to sew her torn clothes. The silence between them felt different now. Less hostile. Still awkward, but survivable. Can I ask you something? Clara said eventually. You're going to anyway. The music boxes. Why do you make them if you never wind them up? Elijah's hands paused on the hinge he was fixing. Habit, I guess. Used to make them for Sarah and Anna. After they died, I kept making them because it was something to do. Kept my hands busy. But you never listened to them. No? Why not? He set down his tools. Because hearing the music makes it real. Makes me remember. And I spent 12 years trying to forget. Clara looked at the shelves lined with silent boxes. 27 of them, each one a ghost. What if forgetting isn't the answer? She asked quietly. What else is there? Remembering. Living with it instead of running from it. Easy to say. Not easy at all, but maybe necessary. Elijah stood, walked to the window. Snow. Always snow. You really think you understand this? I think I understand loss. Maybe not the same as yours, but... She paused. My mother died slowly. Cancer. Months of watching her fade. By the end, I prayed for it to be over. Felt guilty for years after. That's not the same. No, but the guilt is. The wondering if you could have done something different. He turned. I couldn't have saved them. Fever took half the town that winter. I know.
Then why do I still... His voice cracked. He forced it steady. Why does it still feel like my fault? Because you loved them. And love makes everything feel like your responsibility. The truth of it hit hard. Elijah leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. Clara stood carefully, crossed to where he stood. You couldn't save them, but you saved me. That has to count for something. It doesn't balance out.
I'm not talking about balance. I'm talking about the fact that you're still capable of caring enough to act.
That's not nothing.
He wanted to push her away, wanted to retreat into anger and isolation, but he was so damn tired of being alone.
I don't know how to do this, he admitted.
Do what?
Be around people. Care about what happens to them.
Then don't think of it as caring. Think of it as surviving. We help each other survive until the storm breaks. That's all. It was a lie, and they both knew it, but it was a lie they could live with. Deal, Elijah said. Clara smiled, small, careful. Deal. That night they shared the bed, Clara on one side, Elijah on the other, a careful gap between them. It made practical sense. The cabin was freezing and body heat mattered, nothing more. Except lying there in the dark, listening to her breathe, Elijah felt something shift. The cabin didn't feel like a tomb anymore. It felt like shelter. Morning came with Clara screaming. Elijah bolted upright, rifle in hand before his eyes fully opened. Clara was thrashing in the blankets, fighting invisible attackers. No, please don't. Clara! He grabbed her shoulders. Wake up! Her eyes snapped open, wild with terror. For a moment she didn't recognize him. Then awareness flooded back and she collapsed against him, shaking. Sorry, she gasped. I'm sorry. Nightmare? She nodded against his chest.
The stagecoach. The knife at my throat. I keep seeing... I know. He did. He'd had the same dreams for years after the war. Still did sometimes. Does it get better? She asked. Honesty or comfort? He chose honesty. Not really. You just get better at living with it. Clara pulled back, wiped her eyes. That's not very encouraging. Would you prefer I lie? Maybe a little. He almost smiled. It gets easier. Not better, but easier. I'll take it.
They sat there as dawn crept through the window. Gray light, gray sky. Everything gray except the fire. Thank you, Clara said. For just being here. Where else would I be? You know what I mean. He did. They spent that day teaching each other. Clara showed Elijah how to read, really read, not just parse words but understand context. He'd learned basic literacy in the army but never went further. She was patient, surprised by how quickly he picked things up. In return, he taught her to shoot. Started with the basics, how to hold the rifle, how to breathe, how to squeeze the trigger instead of pulling. Why am I learning this? Clara asked, the rifle heavy in her hands. Because if those men come back, you need to be able to fight. I thought you said you'd protect me. I will, but protection fails, best to have a backup plan. She lined up the sight like he'd shown her, aimed at a knot in the far wall, pulled the trigger. The recoil knocked her back a step. Too much tension, Elijah said. Relax your shoulders. Easy for you to say. Try again. She did. Better this time. By the 10th shot, she was actually hitting near where she aimed. Natural, Elijah observed. Or desperate. Same thing out here. That night, the storm finally showed signs of breaking. Wind died down. Snow fell lighter. They could see the tree line again. Tomorrow, Clara said. They'll come tomorrow. Elijah checked the rifle, counted ammunition, 20 rounds. Should be enough. Maybe. You don't sound concerned. Being concerned doesn't change what happens, just makes the waiting worse. Clara watched him prepare. You've done this before. Waited for someone to come kill you. War's mostly waiting. Fighting's just the punctuation. That's a terrible way to describe it. It's accurate. She was quiet for a moment. Then, if they come, if things go bad, they won't. But if they do, Clara. He looked at her directly. I'm not letting them take you, whatever it costs. Why? A week ago you wanted to die. Now you're willing to risk your life for someone you barely know? Good question. He didn't have a good answer. Because it's the right thing to do, he said finally. Since when do you care about right? Since you called me selfish and meant it. Claire's expression softened. I shouldn't have said that. You should have. It was true. Elijah, get some sleep. Tomorrow might be bad. Need you rested. She wanted to argue. He could see it. But finally she nodded, climbed into bed. Elijah sat by the fire, rifle across his lap, and waited for dawn. It came quiet. No wind, no snow. Just cold, clear silence. Elijah stood at the window, scanning the tree line. Nothing moved. Could mean they weren't coming. Could mean they were being careful. See anything? Claire asked from the bed. Not yet. That's good, right? Or it means they're getting closer. She sat up, blankets falling away. What do we do? We wait, and if they come, we fight. That's the plan? Just wait and fight? You got a better one? Clara opened her mouth, closed it. No. Then that's the plan. He moved away from the window, checked the barricade on the door. Solid. He'd reinforced it during the storm. Not impenetrable, but it would slow anyone down. If shooting starts, he told Clara, you get behind the bed. It's the thickest cover in here. What will you do? Whatever needs doing. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. Time crawled. An hour. 2. The sun climbed higher, painfully bright on fresh snow. Elijah's eyes ached from staring at the tree line. Then he saw them. 3 figures. Moving through the trees, spread out, rifles ready. They're here, he said quietly. Clara's face went white. Are you sure? 3 men, armed, coming from the south. She stood, hands shaking. What do I do? Grab the spare rifle, get behind the bed. Don't shoot unless I tell you to. Elijah, do it. She moved fast, fear overcoming hesitation. Elijah positioned himself at the window, rifle ready. The men got closer, 50 yards, 40. He could see their faces now, hard men, experienced, not simple bandits, professional. Theodore Harland had money, all right. 30 yards. One of them raised a hand, halt signal. They stopped, conferred, deciding approach strategy. Elijah opened the window a crack. That's far enough, he called out. The men turned toward the cabin. One of them, tall, scarred face, stepped forward. We're looking for a woman, Scarface called back. Came through here in a stagecoach about a week ago. Haven't seen any stagecoach. Storm was bad, could have gone off the road. We just want to make sure everyone's all right. Everyone's fine, you can leave now. Scarface smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Afraid we can't do that. Boss wants us to check personally. You understand? I understand you're on my property with weapons. That's threatening. No threat intended, friend. Just doing our job. Your job is tracking women through blizzards and cutting throats? The smile disappeared. Careful what you say. Or what? You'll do what you did to that stagecoach driver? The 3 men exchanged looks, confirming what Elijah already knew. Here's how this works, Scarface said, voice dropping all pretense of friendly. We're coming inside. If the woman's in there, she leaves with us peacefully. Nobody gets hurt. And if she's not in there? Then we apologize for the inconvenience and go on our way. Lies. All of it. These men didn't leave witnesses. Elijah made his decision. Can't let you inside, he said. That wasn't a request. Wasn't a suggestion either. Scarface's hand moved toward his rifle. Last chance, friend. I'm not your friend. The man's face hardened. Your funeral. He raised his rifle. Elijah fired first. The shot cracked through the morning air like breaking ice. Scarface went down hard, clutching his shoulder, rifle spinning away into the snow. The other 2 men dove for cover behind trees, returning fire immediately. Wood exploded above Elijah's head. He dropped below the window frame, glass raining down. Stay down, he shouted to Clara. Another shot punched through the wall, splintering logs. Then another. They were bracketing the window, trying to pin him. Elijah crawled to the opposite side, found a gap between logs, fired blind. Heard cursing. Good. Keep them worried. Elijah! Clara's voice was tight with fear. You hit? No! Then stay quiet. He risked a look through the window. Scarface was being dragged behind cover by one of the others, leaving a blood trail in the snow. Two men still combat effective. The odds had improved, but not enough. Silence fell. Elijah reloaded, counted his remaining ammunition. 17 rounds left. Had to make them count. "You just made a big mistake," one of the men shouted. Different voice, younger. "We were going to let you live. Like you let the stagecoach driver live," Elijah called back. No answer. They were regrouping, planning their next move. Elijah used the time to reinforce his position, dragged the heavy table to the window, created a barrier. Not much, but better than nothing. "What's the play here, old man?" The young voice again. "You can't win this. We got time, we got ammunition, and we got friends coming." Probably a bluff, but maybe not. "Then why are you still talking?" Elijah responded. "Seems like if you had the advantage, you'd be shooting." Movement to the left. Elijah swung the rifle, fired, missed. The man ducked back behind a boulder. They were trying to flank, get a better angle. "Clara," Elijah said quietly, "the rifle I gave you, you remember how to use it?" "Yes." Her voice was steadier now. "There's a window on the back wall, small one, near the roof. Can you see it?" "I think so." "I need you to watch it. Anyone tries to come through, you shoot." "I've never shot at a person before." "Pretend it's the knot in the wall, just bigger and meaner. A sound that might have been a laugh or a sob." "Okay." "Don't think, just do." She moved. He heard her positioning herself, the scrape of the rifle barrel against wood. More gunfire erupted from outside. They were getting bolder, advancing between shots. Elijah returned fire methodically, making each round count. Hit one of them in the leg. Heard the scream. The man went down but kept shooting from prone position. Professional, disciplined. This was going to be harder than he'd hoped. "We can do this all day," the young one shouted. "How much ammunition you got in there?" Elijah didn't answer. Let them wonder. A chunk of wall exploded near his head. He tasted splinters, blood, close, too close. Then he heard it, scraping sounds. Back of the cabin. "Clara," he warned, "I hear it." The small window shattered inward. A hand reached through, trying to unlatch the shutter from inside. Clara fired. The hand jerked back with a howl of pain. "Good," Elijah shouted, "again if he tries." But the distraction cost him. While he was focused on the back, the other two rushed the front. They were 10 yards away before he saw them. Elijah fired. Hit the wounded one, the leg shot, center mass. The man folded. But the young one was fast, zigzagging, and Elijah's second shot went wide. The man reached the cabin wall, pressed himself against it, out of Elijah's line of sight. "Problem," Elijah muttered. "What?" Clara called. "One's at the wall. Can't get an angle." "What do we do?" Good question. The cabin door shook once, twice. The barricade held but wouldn't forever. Young and aggressive wasn't a good combination. "Open this door," the man screamed. "Open it or I burn you out." Elijah believed him. Fire was the smart play. Smoke them out. Shoot them when they ran. "You burn this cabin. Your boss doesn't get his woman back," Elijah called. "Boss said alive if possible. Didn't say it was required." That changed things. Elijah looked around the cabin. One door, two windows. Back window was small, barely big enough to crawl through. If they had to run, it would be slow, exposed. "This is your last chance," the man yelled. "Send her out or we all die." Clara was watching Elijah, rifle in her hands, face pale but jaw set, waiting for him to decide. He thought about surrender, thought about pushing Clara toward the door, letting her take her chances with Harland. She'd probably survive. Probably. But he'd seen what these men did, seen the bodies in the snow. "No," he said quietly, to Clara, to himself, to the man outside. "What?" the man demanded. "I said no." Louder this time. "You want her, you come take her." Silence. Then laughter. Bitter, angry. "Your funeral, old man!" Footsteps crunching away. Then nothing. Clara crossed to him, moving low. "What now?" "Now we wait for him to make good on his threat." "The fire?" "Yeah. We can't just... There has to be something. I'm open to suggestions." She looked around desperately. The cabin was one room, wood construction, dried by 12 years of mountain air. It would burn like kindling. The back window, she said. We could run. They'd shoot us before we made 10 feet. So we just sit here and burn? I'm thinking. Think faster. Smoke started seeping under the door. Thin at first, then thicker. Elijah could hear crackling. The bastard had actually done it. Damn, Elijah said. The smoke grew denser. Clara started coughing. Elijah pulled his shirt over his nose and mouth, gestured for her to do the same. Fire spread fast, flames visible now through gaps in the door. Heat building. They had maybe 2 minutes before the whole front wall went up. We have to run, Clara said. I know. You have a plan? Sort of. That's not encouraging. Elijah grabbed the table, dragged it toward the back window. We go out together. I go first. Draw their fire. You follow immediately. Run for the tree line. Don't stop. Don't look back. That's suicide. You got a better idea? She didn't. The door was burning now, barricade catching. Smoke filled the cabin. Elijah could barely see. His eyes watered, lungs burning. Now, he shouted. He smashed out the remaining glass in the back window, hoisted himself up, tight fit, his shoulders barely cleared. He dropped into the snow outside, rolled, came up with rifle ready. A shot rang out. Snow kicked up beside him. There, the young one, 20 yards away, moving for a better angle. Elijah fired, missed, fired again, hit something. The man stumbled but kept coming. Clara, Elijah screamed, move. She was struggling through the window, dress caught on something. Elijah grabbed her arms, pulled. The fabric tore and she tumbled out, landing hard. Another shot, this one closer. Elijah pushed Clara toward the trees. Run! She ran. He provided covering fire, squeezing off shots that probably hit nothing but kept the shooter's head down. His rifle clicked empty. No time to reload. He threw the rifle at the advancing man. Desperate move, but it worked. The young one flinched, ducked. Elijah used the moment to sprint after Clara. Shots followed them into the trees. Bark exploded. Branches fell. Elijah's leg burned, grazed, not hit. He kept running. Clara was ahead, surprisingly fast. Fear made everyone fast. Behind them, the cabin roared with flame. 12 years of isolation, burning. Elijah felt something twist in his chest but couldn't stop to process it. They crashed through underbrush, snow slowing them down. Elijah could hear pursuit. One man at least, maybe more if the hand-shot one had recovered. Where? Clara gasped. Where are we going? Higher ground. We get elevation. We can... A root caught his foot. He went down hard, face first into snow. The impact drove the air from his lungs. Clara stopped, turned back. Elijah! Keep running. No. She grabbed his arm, tried to pull him up. Too light, not strong enough. Elijah forced himself to his feet, head spinning. The young one burst through the trees 10 feet away, rifle raised. Got you, he panted. Elijah pushed Clara behind him. Let her go, this is between us. Nothing's between us, you're just in the way. The rifle barrel centered on Elijah's chest. Point blank. No missing from this distance. Time seemed to slow. Elijah saw details with crystal clarity. The man's finger tightening on the trigger, Clara's hand gripping his coat, snow falling in lazy spirals. This was it then. Not the cabin, not the revolver. Here in the trees, protecting someone he barely knew, worse ways to go. The man fired. Nothing happened. Misfire. The rifle jammed. Elijah didn't think. Pure instinct took over. He lunged forward, knocked the rifle aside, drove his shoulder into the man's chest. They went down together, struggling in the snow. The man was younger, stronger. But Elijah had rage. 12 years of buried rage finally finding a target. He landed punches that connected with bone, felt something crunch under his fist. The man got a hand on Elijah's throat, squeezed, vision narrowed. Elijah grabbed a rock from the frozen ground, brought it down hard. Once. Twice. The grip on his throat loosened. 3 times. The man stopped moving. Elijah rolled off, gasping. His hands were bloody, not all of it his. Clara stared at him, face white with shock. Is he? She whispered. Elijah checked for a pulse. Found nothing. Yeah. He stood unsteadily, took the dead man's rifle and ammunition. Checked the mechanism, bent firing pin. That's what had jammed it. Luck. Pure dumb luck. We need to move, Elijah said. The others... There's only one left, Clara said. Scarface, you shot the other one. You sure? I counted. Smart. Elijah nodded. Still dangerous. Wounded men are unpredictable. They moved deeper into the trees, putting distance between themselves and the cabin. Behind them, smoke rose in a dark column. Everything Elijah owned burning. He should have felt something. Loss. Anger. Something. He felt numb. They climbed for 20 minutes, Clara struggling with altitude and exhaustion. Finally, Elijah called a halt in a small clearing with good sight lines. Rest, he ordered. She collapsed against a tree, breathing hard. Your cabin? Gone. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Elijah, that was your home. It was a box I hid in. Now it's ash. We got bigger problems. Clara looked at him like she was seeing someone new. Maybe she was. You killed that man, she said quietly. Yes. Do you feel? No. I don't feel anything about it. He was trying to kill us. I stopped him. That's it? That's simple? That's simple. She shook her head. How do you do that? Just turn it off? Practice. He didn't tell her about the nightmares he'd have later, about how the man's face would join the others in his dreams. Some things you didn't share. What now, Clara asked. Elijah checked their position. They were maybe a mile from the cabin, higher elevation, good defensive ground. We wait, see if Scarface follows. And if he does, then we finish this. Clara was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm sorry. For what? This. All of this. If I hadn't screamed that night, you'd still have your cabin, your life. You wouldn't be running through the woods, killing people. Stop. But it's true. I said stop. Elijah looked at her directly. I made my choice. The cabin was already burning long before you showed up. Just took you to make me see it. I don't understand. I was already dead, Clara. Had been for 12 years. You didn't ruin my life. You interrupted my funeral. She stared at him. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. It's the truth. Then what are you now? If you were dead before, what are you now? Good question. Elijah didn't have an answer. They sat in silence as the sun climbed higher. The smoke from the cabin thinned, spreading. Everything quiet except wind in the pines. Then Elijah heard it. Movement. Downslope. Careful, deliberate. Someone was following their trail. He touched Clara's arm, pointed. She nodded, understanding. They moved behind cover, weapons ready. A figure emerged from the trees, Scarface, clutching his shoulder where Elijah's first shot had hit. Blood soaked his coat. He was pale, unsteady, but still armed, still dangerous. He stopped in the clearing, breathing hard. I know you're here, he called out. I can see your tracks. Elijah didn't respond. Look, the man continued. This is stupid. We're both bleeding, both tired. Let's talk like reasonable people. Like you talked to that stagecoach driver? Clara called before Elijah could stop her. Scarface turned toward her voice. That wasn't personal, just business. You cut his throat. He didn't cooperate. You cooperate. Nobody gets hurt. Your friend down the hill would disagree, Elijah said, revealing his position. Scarface turned, rifle rising, but his movements were slow, pain making him clumsy. That was self-defense, he said. You started this. You fired first. You came to my home with weapons and threats. Don't talk to me about who started what. Your home? Scarface laughed, bitter. Your home's ash now. You got nothing. No shelter, no supplies. Winter's not done. You'll freeze before week's end. He wasn't wrong. We'll manage, Elijah said. Or you could end this. Give me the girl. I go back to Denver. Tell Mr. Harlan she died in the fire. Clean, simple. You walk away. No. Think about it. You don't know this woman. Knew her what, a week? Why die for a stranger? Elijah considered the question. Why was he doing this? Clara was right. A week ago, he'd been ready to put a bullet in his own head. Now he was fighting to protect someone he barely knew. Didn't make sense, except it did. Because it's the right thing to do, Elijah said. Scarface spat blood. Right, sure, look where right got you. No home, no future, bleeding in the snow for a woman who'll leave you the second she can. Maybe. but I'll still have done the right thing. You're an idiot. Probably. They faced each other across the clearing. Two men, both wounded, both tired. The difference was Elijah had nothing left to lose. Last chance, Scarface said. Walk away. No. The man's face hardened. Then we do this the hard way. He raised his rifle. So did Elijah. The shot came from the trees to Elijah's left, Clara's position. It took Scarface in the chest. He looked down at the spreading red stain, surprised. You, he started. Clara fired again. This time Scarface went down. Silence. Elijah crossed to the body, checked for pulse. Nothing. He looked at Clara. She was standing now, rifle still raised, face blank with shock. I killed him, she whispered. Yes. I killed a man. You saved our lives. The rifle slipped from her hands. She stared at her shaking fingers like they belonged to someone else. I can't. Elijah caught her as her legs gave out, held her while she shook, not crying, just shaking. Breathe, he said. Just breathe. I'm not a killer. I don't. You did what you had to do. That's all. That's survival. It doesn't feel like survival. It feels like hell, I know. But it was him or us. You made the right choice. She looked up at him. How do you live with it? One day at a time. Sometimes 1 hour. Clara pressed her face against his shoulder. I want to go home. Where's home? I don't know anymore. Elijah understood that feeling. They stayed like that for a while, two people holding each other up in the snow, surrounded by bodies and the smell of smoke. Finally, Clara pulled back. What now? Really? What do we do now? Elijah looked around. The cabin was gone. His supplies, his tools, his music boxes, all ash. They had 2 rifles, maybe 40 rounds of ammunition, and the clothes on their backs. Winter still had another month at least. The nearest town was 12 miles through hostile terrain. They were both injured, exhausted, and wanted. The smart move was surrender, walk into town, explain what happened, hope for mercy. But Elijah had learned not to trust mercy. We survive, he said. How? There's another cabin, old trapper's place, maybe 8 miles north, abandoned but still standing last time I checked. We can make it there, hole up till we figure out the next move. 8 miles, Claire repeated. In this snow, wounded. You got a better idea? She didn't. Then we start walking. They salvaged what they could from Scarface's body. Ammunition, a knife, a canvas bag with some dried food. Not much, but better than nothing. The journey north was brutal. Every step hurt. The leg graze Elijah had taken was worse than he'd thought. Not serious, but enough to slow him down. Clara had twisted her ankle in the escape and could barely put weight on it. They took turns leaning on each other, switching when one got too tired. Tell me about your wife, Clara said at one point, probably just trying to distract from the pain. Why? Because I want to know. Because we might die out here and I want to know something real about you before we do. Elijah was quiet for a long time. Then, her name was Sarah. We met in St. Louis before the war. She was a school teacher. I was nobody. Just a kid who could read and wanted to learn more. She taught me. What was she like? Smart? Stubborn? Wouldn't take nonsense from anyone, including me. He smiled without meaning to. She sang while she worked. Drove me crazy sometimes, but I'd give anything to hear it again. And your daughter? The smile faded. Anna, she was 4 when it happened. Looked just like Sarah. Same dark hair, same eyes. His voice went rough. She loved music boxes. I made her first one for her 3rd birthday. She'd wind it up and dance, just spinning in circles till she got dizzy. That's why you kept making them. Yeah. She'd be, 16 now? 16. Yeah. Do you think about that? Who she would have been? Every day. Clara squeezed his hand. I'm sorry, that's not enough, I know, but I'm sorry. Me too. They walked on. The sun was setting when they finally saw it, the old trapper's cabin, half buried in snow but intact. Elijah had worried it might have collapsed in the years since he'd last passed this way. But it still stood, small mercies. The door was frozen shut. Elijah kicked it open. Inside was exactly what he'd expected. 1 room, dirt floor, broken furniture. But the roof held, and the walls blocked wind. It would do. They cleared space, got a fire going in the old stone hearth using wood scraps and pine needles. The smoke was bad, chimney partially blocked, but warmth mattered more than comfort. Clara collapsed near the fire, exhausted beyond words. Elijah checked her ankle, swollen but not broken, then examined his own leg. The bullet had carved a groove along his calf, deep enough to bleed, not deep enough to kill. He bound it with strips torn from his already ruined shirt. "We made it," Clara said, disbelief in her voice. "For now." "You're really optimistic, you know that?" "I'm realistic." "Same thing to you." Maybe she was right. Elijah stepped outside, watched the sun disappear behind mountains. From here he could see smoke still rising from where his cabin had been. 12 years of his life reduced to a column of ash. He should have felt something. Instead, he just felt tired. "Elijah?" Claire's voice from inside. "Yeah?" "Thank you for not giving up, for fighting." He didn't know what to say to that. Back inside, Claire had curled up near the fire, already half asleep. Elijah sat with his back to the wall, rifle across his knees, keeping watch even though he wasn't sure what he was watching for. "Can I ask you something?" Clara murmured. "You're asking anyway. Before, at your cabin, you had that gun. You were really going to do it, weren't you?" Silence. "Yes," Elijah admitted. "And now?" "Now what?" Do you still want to die?" He thought about it. Honest answer. "I don't know. Ask me when we're not running for our lives." "That's more honest than I expected." "You asked." She was quiet for a moment. "I'm glad you didn't. Pull the trigger, I mean. I'm glad I screamed." "Me too," Elijah said, and realized he meant it. Outside, wind picked up. Inside, the fire crackled. Two people, alone in the wilderness, surrounded by enemies in winter and uncertainty, but alive. For now, that was enough. They spent 3 days in the trapper's cabin before either of them could move without pain shooting through their bodies. 3 days of tending wounds, rationing the meager supplies they'd salvaged, and listening to the wind howl through cracks in the walls. On the 4th morning, Elijah woke to find Clara already up, attempting to make something resembling coffee from pine needles and melted snow. "That's going to taste like hell," he said. "Everything tastes like hell. At least this is hot." She had a point. He sat up slowly, testing his leg. The wound was healing cleaner than he'd expected. Claire had insisted on changing the bandage twice a day using strips of cloth boiled in snow water. She'd learned fast how to survive out here. "We need to talk about what comes next," Clara said, handing him the tin cup of pine water. "I know. We can't stay here forever. We have maybe 3 days of food left, and that's if we stretch it." "I know," Elijah repeated. "So what's the plan?" He drank the bitter liquid, bought himself time to think. The truth was he'd been avoiding this conversation, because every plan led to the same conclusion. They had to leave the mountain. "Town," he said finally. "We go to the trading post. Get supplies, figure out our next move. Theodore's men could be waiting there." "Could be? But we don't have a choice. We need food, medicine, ammunition. Can't get that out here." Clara was quiet, staring into her own cup. "What if they are waiting? What if Theodore sent more men?" "Then we deal with it." "How? We barely survived 3 of them. If he sends 6 or 10, he won't." Elijah set the cup down. "Think about it. He sent his best men. They failed. Bodies are out there in the snow, including that stagecoach you were on. That's a lot of explaining to do. Local law might be bought, but federal marshals ask harder questions." "You think he'll back off?" "I think he'll be more careful, which gives us room to move." Clara didn't look convinced, but she nodded. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow. Give us 1 more day to rest." "And then what? We just walk into town like nothing happened?" "We tell the truth. Or most of it. Bandits attacked your coach. I found you in the wreck. They came after us. Self-defense. All of it." "Will they believe that?" "They'll believe what they want to believe. But we got bodies to back up our story. That counts for something." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What about after? After we get supplies and deal with the law? What happens to me?" Elijah looked at her. Really looked. She was different from the woman he'd pulled out of the snow. Harder.
The city softness had burned away, leaving something tougher underneath. "That's up to you," he said. "Is it? Because I don't know where to go. Can't go back to Denver. Can't go home to my father. California was the plan, but..." She laughed bitterly. That plan died with everyone else on that coach. "You could stay." The words came out before he could stop them. Clara's head snapped up. "What?" "I mean," Elijah fumbled, uncharacteristic. "The mountain. You could stay. Not with me, obviously, but there's homesteads, people looking for workers. You've learned enough to survive out here. You want me to become a mountain hermit like you? I'm just saying it's an option." She studied his face. "That's not what you meant." "Clara." "You meant with you. Stay with you." He looked away. "Doesn't matter what I meant. Forget I said anything." "Why doesn't it matter?" "Because you're going to leave anyway. Soon as you can, you'll head for some city, find a life that makes sense. That's what people do." "That's what Sarah did?" The question was gentle, but it hit hard. "Sarah died here, buried in this mountain with our daughter. She didn't leave. She just..." His voice cracked. "She just stopped being." Clara moved closer, sat beside him. "I'm not Sarah. I know that. And I'm not planning to die here." "Good. But I'm also not planning to run away the first chance I get." Elijah turned to look at her. "Why not? You should. This place, it'll kill you eventually. Weather or animals or just loneliness. Better to leave while you can." "Is that what you want? For me to leave?" "What I want doesn't matter." "Stop saying that," Clara's voice rose. "Stop acting like what you want doesn't count. You saved my life, Elijah. You burned down your home fighting for me. You killed men to protect me. Don't tell me what you want doesn't matter." "I don't know what I want." The admission hung in the air between them. "I spent 12 years wanting one thing," Elijah continued, quieter. "To die. To stop hurting. To be with Sarah and Anna again. That was simple. Clear. Then you showed up and now I can't." "Can't what?" "Can't go back to how it was. Can't pretend I'm still just waiting to die. But I also can't..." He struggled for words. "I don't know how to want to live again. Don't know if I even can." Clara took his hand. Her fingers were warm despite the cold. "Then don't think about it like that," she said. "Don't think about wanting to live. Just think about today. Getting through today. Then tomorrow. One day at a time. That's not enough. It's more than you had a week ago." She was right. A week ago, he'd had nothing but a loaded gun and the will to use it. Now he had, what? A half-dead trapper's cabin, a woman who refused to leave, and a future that terrified him more than death ever had. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Of what?" "Losing again, caring about something and watching it die. Clara, I can't do that again." "Then don't care about me." He looked at her like she'd suggested he stop breathing. "I'm serious," Clara continued. "If it's too hard, if it scares you that much, then don't care. I'll leave. You'll go back to your life, problem solved." "That's not what I..." "Then what do you want?" Elijah met her eyes, brown, steady, challenging him to be honest. "I want you to stay," he said. "I want to stop being alone. I want to believe that maybe, somehow, I get another chance at..." He couldn't finish. "At what?" "At not being broken." Clara squeezed his hand. "You're not broken. You're hurt. There's a difference." "Feels the same." "It's not. Broken can't be fixed. Hurt can heal." "You sound very sure about that." "I have to be. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this?" They sat in silence as weak sunlight filtered through the dirty window. Outside, snow had started falling again. Not heavy, just persistent. "If I stay," Clara said carefully, "what does that look like? We can't live in this cabin forever." "No. We'd need to rebuild or find somewhere else." "Where?" "There's land, north of where my cabin was. Good water, sheltered valley. I looked at it years ago, thought about building there. Never did because..." "Because you were waiting to die." "Yeah, but you're not anymore." "I'm trying not to be." Clara smiled, small, careful. "That's something. It's not much. It's a start." Elijah wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that maybe, impossibly, he could build something new, but doubt was easier than hope. Doubt was familiar.
What if it doesn't work? He asked. What if it does?
Clara. No, I'm serious. You're so focused on what could go wrong that you can't see what might go right. What if we build a life here? What if we make it work? What if you actually get to be happy again? I don't remember how. Then I'll teach you. Same way you taught me to shoot and track and survive. We'll figure it out together. The offer was genuine.
He could see it in her face. She actually meant it.
You're crazy, he said.
Probably, but I'd rather be crazy and alive than sane and dead. When did you get so smart? About 3 days ago, when I killed a man and didn't fall apart. Her voice was light, but Elijah heard the edge underneath. She was still processing that, still trying to reconcile the woman who'd fled Denver with the woman who'd pulled a trigger. You doing okay with that? He asked. The killing? Clara was quiet for a moment. I don't know. I keep seeing his face, keep hearing the sound, but I also keep thinking he would have killed us, both of us, so I did what I had to do. That's the truth. Doesn't make it easier. No, but it makes it survivable. She nodded, understanding. They spent the rest of that day preparing for the journey to town. Elijah inventoried their supplies: 2 rifles, 43 rounds, 1 knife, a canvas bag with dried meat and hardtack. Not much, but enough. Clara practiced loading the rifle until she could do it blind. Elijah watched, impressed despite himself. She'd come a long way from the half-frozen woman he'd pulled from the wreckage. That night they shared the one intact bedroll, necessity overriding propriety. The cabin was too cold for separate sleeping. They lay back to back, warmth shared between them. Elijah? Clara's voice in the darkness. Yeah? Thank you for giving me a reason to fight. You had your own reasons. I had fear. That's not the same as a reason. He didn't know what to say to that. When I was locked in Theodore's house, Clara continued, I used to imagine escaping, but I never imagined after, never thought about what I'd do once I was free. It was just, get out, survive, keep moving. And now? Now I can imagine after, can see a future that's more than just running. What's it look like? This future. She was quiet for a long time. Elijah thought maybe she'd fallen asleep. Then,
small, simple, a cabin that doesn't leak, a garden in summer, work that matters. Someone who... She stopped. Someone who what? Someone who sees me, really sees me, not as property or a transaction or a problem to solve, just me. Elijah understood that hunger, to be seen, to matter. I see you, he said quietly. I know. They fell asleep like that. 2 people who'd almost died, choosing instead to live. Morning came gray and cold. They ate the last of their food, packed what little they had, and started the 12-mile journey to the trading post. The walk was brutal. Snow had drifted deep in places, forcing them to detour. Elijah's leg ached with every step. Claire's ankle wasn't fully healed either. They moved slow, resting often. Tell me about this trading post, Clara said during one break. Not much to tell. General store, blacksmith, maybe 24 people on a good day. Owner's name is Marcus Webb. Good man, mostly honest. Will he help us? Depends what we're asking for. Truth, information, maybe a place to stay while we figure things out. He might. Marcus knew Sarah, liked her. He'll remember me. That a good thing or bad thing? Honestly, don't know. They kept walking. By midday, they crested a ridge and could see the valley below. Smoke rising from chimneys. The trading post looking exactly like Elijah remembered. There, he said. Clara stared at the small cluster of buildings. Doesn't look like much. It's not, but it's civilization. They descended carefully, watching for any sign of Harlan's men. The streets were mostly empty. February meant people stayed inside. They made it to the trading post without incident. Marcus Webb was behind the counter when they walked in, same as always. Big man, 50-some years old, with a beard that had gone white. He looked up when the door opened, and his face went through several expressions in quick succession. Surprise. Recognition. Shock. Elijah Vance, he said slowly. Thought you were dead. Not yet. Been what, 2 years since you came down? 3. Marcus's eyes shifted to Clara. And who's this? Clara Whitlock. She needs help. What kind of help? Elijah laid it out plain. The stagecoach attack. Finding Clara. The men who'd come hunting. The fight. The bodies. Marcus listened without interrupting. When Elijah finished, the older man poured 3 whiskeys and slid them across the counter. That's one hell of a story, he said. It's the truth. Didn't say it wasn't. Marcus studied Clara. You the one Theodore Harlan's been looking for? Clara stiffened. You know about that? Men came through here 5 days ago, asking questions. Showing a sketch of a woman matched your description, said there was money for information. Did you tell them anything? Elijah's hand drifted toward his rifle. Easy. Marcus raised both hands. I don't deal with men like that. Told them I hadn't seen anyone, sent them on their way. But others might have talked. How many others? Hard to say. Most people here mind their business, but money talks loud. Elijah cursed under his breath. We need supplies, food, ammunition, medicine. Then we're gone. Where are you planning to go? Does it matter? Might. Federal marshals due through here next week. Law's going to have questions about those bodies you left. Self-defense, all of it. I believe you, but you'll need to convince the marshal. Marcus refilled their glasses. I can put you up till then. Got a room out back, not fancy, but private. Why would you do that? Clara asked. Because Elijah's wife once taught my daughter to read when no one else would. Because I don't like men who hunt women. Because it's the right thing to do. He shrugged. Take your pick. Elijah felt something loosen in his chest. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You're still in deep trouble, but at least you can be in trouble with a roof over your head. They took the room. It was small, barely bigger than the trapper's cabin, but it had a real bed and a stove that worked. Luxury. Marcus brought supplies, food, clean bandages, ammunition. Refused payment. We'll settle accounts later, he said, after you're not wanted men. We're not wanted, Elijah protested. Not officially, but Harlan's got reach. He'll push for charges if he can. Murder, kidnapping, whatever sticks. It was self-defense. I know, but you'll need to prove it. After Marcus left, Clara sat on the bed and put her head in her hands. This isn't over, she said. It's never going to be over. We'll make it work. How? Theodore has money, power, connections. We have, what? A story and some bodies? We have the truth. Since when does truth matter to men like him? Elijah had no answer for that. They spent the next 2 days laying low, waiting for the marshal. Elijah used the time to buy proper supplies, tools, lumber, seeds for spring. Planning for a future he wasn't sure would happen. Clara wrote letters. One to her brother in Boston, explaining everything. One to Theodore Harlan, formal and cold, ending their engagement permanently. One to her father, which she wrote and rewrote 3 times before finally giving up. I don't know what to say to him, she admitted. The truth. That he sold me. That he chose money over his daughter. Yeah, that. She shook her head. He wouldn't care. Then why write at all? Because I need to say it, even if he doesn't listen. Elijah understood that need. He'd written letters too, after Sarah and Anna died. Never sent them. Just needed to put words to the grief. On the 3rd day, the marshal arrived. Samuel Cross was younger than Elijah expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and a reputation for fairness. Marcus had vouched for him, said he couldn't be bought. They met in the back room of the trading post. Cross listened to their story, took notes, asked pointed questions. These bodies, he said finally. Where are they now? Still in the snow, north of where my cabin was. Cabin burned down? Yes. Convenient. Wasn't convenient. It was arson. Cross studied Elijah. You're the mountain man, the one who disappeared after his family died. Yes. And you just happened to find Miss Whitlock in a stagecoach wreck. That's what happened. And these men, Harlan's men, they attacked you unprovoked. They came to my home armed, made threats. When I refused to hand over Clara, they opened fire. So you shot first, to defend my property and my life. Cross turned to Clara. And you killed one of them. Yes? Her voice was steady. Why? Because he was going to kill Elijah. Because I didn't have a choice.
There's always a choice, Miss Whitlock. Not if you want to survive. The marshal made more notes. Theodore Harland is a powerful man, connected. He's already filed a complaint claiming you're a runaway who conspired with this man to murder his employees. Clara's face went white. That's a lie. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it's your word against his, and his word carries weight. My word carries bodies, Elijah said. 3 men, all armed, all on my property. That's evidence. Of a fight doesn't prove who started it. We're telling the truth. I believe you, but belief and proof are different things. Cross closed his notebook. Here's what's going to happen. You'll both stay in town until I can investigate. Visit the scene, examine the bodies, gather evidence. Then I'll make my report to the territorial court. And then, Clara asked, then they decide if charges get filed. How long will that take? Weeks, maybe months. Elijah felt trapped. We can't stay here that long. You don't have a choice. You run, you look guilty. You stay. You have a chance. It wasn't really a choice at all. Cross left. Elijah and Clara sat in the small room processing. Months, Clara said. We could be stuck here for months. Or we run, head west, change our names, disappear. And spend our lives looking over our shoulders? No. She stood pacing. We did the right thing. We defended ourselves. I'm not running from that. Even if it means jail or worse. Even then, Elijah admired her certainty, wished he shared it. Okay, he said. We stay. We fight. We prove our case. Together? Together. Clara smiled. It was tired, scared, but real. Then we better get our story straight, because if Theodore sends lawyers, they'll try to tear us apart. Let them try. They spent the next week preparing. Elijah showed the marshal where the cabin had been, where the bodies lay frozen in the snow. Cross took statements, made sketches, collected evidence. Clara faced harder scrutiny. The marshal brought in a woman from town to chaperone, asking pointed questions about her relationship with Elijah, about why she'd fled Theodore, about whether she'd conspired to fake the attack. She held firm, told the truth without embellishment, showed the bruises on her wrists where Theodore had grabbed her, the letters threatening her if she didn't comply. Evidence mounted. Slowly, the marshal's skepticism shifted to belief. I think you're telling the truth, Cross admitted one evening. But that doesn't mean the court will agree. Harlan's already hired lawyers. They'll argue self-defense went too far, that you could have surrendered, could have de-escalated. We tried, Elijah said. They came to kill us. I believe you, but juries are unpredictable. So what do? You wait. You pray. And you hope justice actually means something. Waiting was torture. Days bled into weeks. February became March. Snow started to melt, revealing the mountain's bones. Elijah worked to keep busy, helped Marcus with repairs, chopped wood, planned the cabin he'd build come spring. Clara helped too, learning the rhythms of trading post life. They fell into a routine. Breakfast together. Work. Dinner. Evenings spent talking, planning, pretending they weren't waiting for their lives to be decided by strangers. One night, Clara asked the question Elijah had been avoiding. What if we lose? What if the court sides with Theodore? Then we deal with it. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. She moved closer, took his hand. I need to know you won't give up, that you won't... She couldn't finish. Won't what? Won't go back to that cabin with a gun and finish what you started. Elijah's breath caught. Clara, promise me. Whatever happens, promise me you won't give up. He wanted to. Wanted to promise that he'd fight forever, that nothing could break him, but he'd learned not to make promises he couldn't keep. I promise I'll try, he said. That's all I can give you. Then that's enough. She kissed him, soft, tentative, like asking a question. Elijah kissed her back. An answer. They held each other as the night deepened, two people choosing hope over certainty, together over alone. Outside, the mountain waited. Spring coming, winter dying, the world turning regardless of their fears. Inside, they had this moment, this room, each other. For now, impossibly, it was enough. The telegram arrived on a Tuesday morning in late March, when the mountain snow had finally started its slow retreat and the first green shoots pushed through frozen ground. Marshal Cross delivered it himself, his face unreadable as he handed the paper to Elijah. "Court's made a decision," he said. Elijah's hands trembled as he unfolded it. Clara stood beside him, her fingers gripping his arm. He read it once, then again, making sure he understood. "Well?" Clara's voice was barely a whisper. "No charges. Self-defense ruled justifiable." He looked at Cross. "We're free?" "You're free." Judge reviewed my report, examined the evidence, interviewed witnesses. Harlan's lawyers tried to argue conspiracy, but couldn't make it stick. Bodies tell their own story. 3 armed men on your property, all shot from defensive positions. Clara's testimony about the stagecoach attack corroborated everything. Clara's knees buckled. Elijah caught her, held her upright. "What about Theodore?" she asked. "Can he still come after us?" Cross shook his head. Judge issued a restraining order. "Harlan comes within 100 miles of you. He goes to jail. Plus there's an investigation now into those stagecoach murders. Your testimony put federal eyes on him. He's got bigger problems than chasing you." "So it's really over," Elijah said. "The legal part, yeah, the rest—" Cross shrugged. "That's up to you two." After the marshal left, Elijah and Clara stood in the small room, holding each other, trying to process what freedom actually meant. "We can leave," Clara said. "Go anywhere. Do anything." "Yeah." "You don't sound excited." "I am. Just—" Elijah struggled for words. "Spent so long waiting for bad news that good news feels wrong." Clara pulled back to look at him. "We won, Elijah. We fought and we won." "I know." "Then why do you look like someone died?" "Because now comes the hard part." "What's harder than almost dying?" "Figuring out how to live." She understood. The fight had been simple: survive or don't. Now they had to decide what survival meant, what they were to each other, what future they'd build from the wreckage. "One step at a time," Clara said. "Remember?" "Yeah." "So what's the first step?" Elijah thought about it, about the burned cabin, the mountain waiting, the life he'd abandoned 12 years ago, and the one he might build now. "We go back," he said, "to the mountain, see what's left." They left the next morning, packs loaded with supplies Marcus had sold them at cost. The walk was familiar now, the trail less hostile. Spring was coming early this year. Elijah could smell it in the air, feel it in the softening earth. The journey took 2 days. When they finally crested the ridge above where his cabin had stood, Elijah stopped. Clara waited beside him, giving him space to process. Below, in the small clearing, nothing remained but ash and charred timbers. 12 years of his life reduced to carbon and memory. The music boxes were gone, the tools, the furniture, everything. "I'm sorry," Clara said quietly. "Don't be. It needed to burn." "Did it?" "Yeah." He started down the slope. "I was dying in that cabin long before you showed up. Fire just made it official." They walked through the ruins together. Elijah kicked at debris, found nothing worth salvaging. The stone fireplace still stood, blackened but intact. The foundation was solid. Everything else was ash. "Could rebuild here," Clara observed. "No, too many ghosts." "Where then?" Elijah pointed north toward the valley he'd mentioned weeks ago. "There. Fresh start. New foundation." They walked the mile to the valley, and Elijah saw it with new eyes. The land was everything he'd remembered: sheltered, good water, timber for building. But now he wasn't looking at it as a place to hide. He was seeing it as a place to live. "It's beautiful," Clara said. "It's raw. Would take months to build a cabin, clear land, get ready for winter." "Then we better start soon." He looked at her. "You're sure about this? About staying here? About—" He gestured vaguely. "All of it? Are you asking if I'm sure about the mountain or about you?" "Both." Clara stepped closer. "I'm sure about you. The mountain I'm still learning, but yeah, I'm sure." "Why?" "Because for the first time in my life, I get to choose. Not my father, not Theodore, not circumstance. Me. I choose this. I choose you." Elijah felt something crack in his chest, not breaking, opening.
I don't know how to be what you need, he admitted. What do you think I need? Someone whole. Someone who's got their life figured out. Someone who's perfect? Clara shook her head. I don't need perfect, Elijah. I need real. And you're the most real thing I've ever known. I'm broken. So am I. Maybe that's the point. She was right. They were both damaged, both scarred, but maybe that meant they understood each other in ways whole people never could. Okay, Elijah said. Okay, what? Okay, let's build something. Together, see what happens. Clara smiled. That's the most romantic thing you've ever said. I'm out of practice. I noticed. They spent that day marking out where the cabin would go, planning the layout. Elijah drew rough sketches in the dirt, while Clara asked questions, made suggestions. They argued about window placement, debated roof pitch, compromised on door size. It felt normal, domestic, like something people did when they had a future. That night they camped in the valley, watching stars emerge as darkness fell. The fire crackled between them. Tell me about the music box, Clara said. The one you were working on that night. Did it survive? No, burned with everything else. Do you remember the melody? Yeah. Will you make another one? Elijah was quiet for a long time. Making music boxes had been an act of grief, a way to apologize to ghosts. The idea of making one now, for different reasons, felt strange. Maybe, he said finally, if I can figure out why. What do you mean? Before I made them because I needed something to do with my hands, something to fill the silence, but now, he looked at her across the fire. Now the silence doesn't feel empty anymore. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet. Clara fed another stick to the fire. My mother used to say that grief isn't something you get over. It's something you learn to carry. You don't heal, you just get stronger at bearing the weight. Your mother sounds wise. She was. Also stubborn, like me. Clara smiled. She would have liked you. What makes you think that? Because she valued honesty over charm, and you're the most honest person I've ever met. Brutal sometimes, but honest. Elijah considered that. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. Whether it's a compliment depends on what you value. What do you value? Truth. Even when it hurts, maybe especially when it hurts. They fell into comfortable silence. Above them, stars wheeled across the sky, indifferent to human drama. Elijah? Clara's voice was soft. What would Sarah think about this? About us? The question caught him off guard. He'd avoided thinking about it, afraid of the guilt that might follow. I don't know, he said honestly. Part of me thinks she'd be happy, that she'd want me to move on, to find something good. But another part feels like betrayal. Yeah. It's not, you know. Moving forward doesn't erase what you had before. Doesn't it? If I build a life here with you, if I'm happy again, doesn't that mean Sarah and Anna mattered less? No. It means they mattered so much that their loss almost destroyed you. But you survived anyway. That's not betrayal. That's honoring them by refusing to die with them. Elijah let that sink in. He'd spent 12 years thinking survival was cowardice, that the brave thing was following his family into darkness. But maybe Clara was right. Maybe living was the harder choice. I miss them, he said quietly. Every day. That won't change. I don't expect it to. I wouldn't want it to. But I want this too. Want to build something with you. Want to wake up and have a reason to face the day. Then do both. Miss them and want this. You don't have to choose. It sounded simple when she said it. Maybe it was. They returned to the trading post the next day to gather materials. Word had spread about the court's decision, and people treated them differently now. Less like suspicious strangers, more like neighbors. Marcus helped them plan the build. You'll need logs, lots of them. I can get you a good rate on tools if you're buying bulk. We are, Elijah confirmed. Starting when? Soon as the ground's workable. Another week, maybe 2. Marcus nodded approval. You'll need help. Building a cabin alone takes months. With a crew, you could have walls up in a few weeks. Can't afford a crew. Didn't say anything about money. People around here help each other. You help them later when they need it. It was a foreign concept to Elijah.
He'd spent so long alone that the idea of community felt alien, but he nodded acceptance. True to his word, Marcus spread the word. Within days, men started showing up. Trappers, homesteaders, miners between claims. They brought tools, muscle, experience. Clara organized them, surprising herself with natural leadership. She assigned tasks, coordinated meals, kept track of progress. The men respected her, partially because she worked as hard as any of them, partially because the story of her shooting Scarface had spread and earned a rough kind of admiration. The cabin rose fast. Foundation first, then floor joist, then walls. Elijah worked from dawn to dark, his body remembering skills from the war when they'd built fortifications under fire. This was different, though. This was building towards something instead of against. On the 10th day of construction, a stranger arrived. He was well-dressed, out of place among the rough mountain men. City clothes, clean hands, nervous eyes. He approached Elijah during a water break. "Mr. Vance?" "Yeah. My name is James Whitlock. I'm Clara's brother." Elijah's hand drifted toward his knife. "What do you want?" "To talk. Just talk, please." Clara emerged from the half-built cabin, saw her brother, froze. "James?" "Clara," his voice cracked. I came as soon as I heard. Father said you were dead, but then the lawyers told me about the court case and Father knows I'm alive?" James nodded. "He knows. Clara, he's sick. Consumption. The doctors say months at most." Clara's face went hard. "And he sent you to bring me back?" "No, I came on my own, to apologize." James looked at his feet. "I was wrong. About Theodore, about you, about everything. I should have protected you instead of taking his side." "Yes." James met her eyes. "I'm sorry. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to know." Clara stood silent for a long moment. Elijah watched, ready to intervene if needed. The other workers had stopped, sensing drama. "Why now?" Clara finally asked. "Why come all this way now?" "Because I was a coward before, and because—" James pulled out a letter. "Father wanted me to give you this. He's too proud to come himself, too sick to travel, but he wrote." Clara took the letter like it might bite. "What does it say?" "I don't know. He sealed it." She didn't open it, just held it, staring at the familiar handwriting on the envelope. "You came all this way just to deliver a letter?" Elijah asked. "And to see my sister, to make sure she's—" James looked around at the half-built cabin, the mountain wilderness, Clara in work clothes with calloused hands. "To make sure she's all right." "I'm fine," Clara said. "Are you? Because this doesn't look like—" "Like what? Like the life you imagined for me?" Clara's voice sharpened. "This is exactly the life I want, the one I chose. Not the one sold to Theodore Harlan for a business merger." James flinched. "That's not fair, isn't it? You and Father decided my future without asking me. Theodore decided he owned me. Everyone decided except me." "You're right." James's shoulders sagged. "You're absolutely right, and I can't change the past, but I'm here now trying to— I don't know what I'm trying to do. Make amends, maybe." Clara looked at Elijah. He gave a slight shrug. "Your choice." "You can stay for dinner," Clara said finally, "but then you leave. I'm not going back to Boston. Not going to play daughter for a dying father who never valued me as more than property." "I understand." That evening, they ate together. Clara, Elijah, James, and Marcus. Conversation was stilted at first, but James made an effort. He asked about the cabin, about their plans, about life on the mountain. He didn't judge, didn't lecture, just listened. After dinner, he pulled Clara aside. Elijah watched from a distance, giving them privacy but ready if needed. "I mean it," James said quietly. "I'm sorry for everything. Sorry doesn't undo years of choosing Father over me." "I know, but it's a start." Clara softened slightly. "What's he like now? Father, I mean, is he scared?" "Terrified. And angry, mostly at himself, I think. He knows he failed you. Too proud to say it, but I can see it eating him." "Good." "Clara, no. He made choices. He chose money over me, Theodore over my safety, pride over family. He gets to live with that. I'm done carrying his guilt. James nodded. Fair enough. But the letter, will you read it? Maybe, eventually, when I'm ready. That's all I can ask. He left the next morning, back to Boston and a dying father Clara might never forgive. Elijah walked him to the edge of the property. Take care of her, James said. She takes care of herself.
I know, but James looked back at the cabin site. She deserves happiness. Real happiness. Can you give her that? I can try. That's all anyone can promise. James offered his hand. Elijah shook it. She's stronger than I ever gave her credit for, James said. Stronger than any of us. I know. After he was gone, Elijah found Clara sitting by the foundation, holding the unopened letter. You gonna read it? He asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to know what he has to say. Part of me doesn't care anymore. No right answer. What would you do? Elijah thought about the letters he'd written to Sarah and Anna, the words he'd needed to say even though they'd never hear them. I'd read it, he said. Not for him. For you. So you know you didn't leave anything unsaid, even if he did. Clara nodded slowly. She broke the seal, unfolded the paper. Her eyes moved across the lines. Elijah couldn't read her expression. When she finished, she handed him the letter. It was short. 2 paragraphs in shaky handwriting. Clara, I know I have no right to ask your forgiveness. I made choices that hurt you, that put money and pride above your well-being. I thought I was securing your future. I was wrong. You deserved a father who listened, who valued your voice, who protected you instead of selling you. I failed at all of it. I'm dying now, and my only regret is that I won't live to see the woman you've become. James tells me you're happy, building a life on your own terms. That's all I should have wanted for you from the start. I'm sorry. I love you. I should have said it more. Father. Elijah handed it back. Well, it's not enough, Clara said. But it's something. You gonna write back? No, let him die with the guilt. Maybe that's cruel, but she folded the letter carefully. I'm not ready to forgive him. Maybe I never will be. That's fair. Is it? Yeah, forgiveness isn't mandatory. You get to choose who earns it. Clara looked at him. Did you forgive yourself? For Sarah and Anna? The question hit hard. No. Why not? Because I should have saved them, should have done something different, been better, tried harder. They had a fever. You couldn't control that. Doesn't matter. I was supposed to protect them. Elijah. Clara took his hands. You can't protect people from everything. Death comes regardless. You didn't fail them. You loved them. There's a difference. He wanted to believe her, wanted to let go of the guilt he'd carried for 12 years. I'm trying, he said, trying to believe that. Then keep trying. Same as you're trying to build this cabin, trying to live again, one day at a time. She was right. Again. Healing wasn't a single moment. It was 1,000 small choices to keep going. The cabin was finished 6 weeks later. Not fancy, but solid. 2 rooms, a loft, windows that actually fit, a door that locked, a roof that wouldn't leak. Home. They moved in on a Saturday. Marcus and some of the men helped carry supplies up from the trading post, furniture, food stores, tools. There was an impromptu celebration, whiskey passed around, stories shared. As the sun set and people started leaving, Marcus pulled Elijah aside. You did good work here, the older man said. Couldn't have done it without help. That's the point. You let people help. That's progress for a man who spent 12 years alone. Elijah nodded. It was progress. Small, imperfect, but real. After everyone left, Elijah and Clara stood in their new cabin. Their home. The fire crackled in the hearth. Outside, twilight painted the mountains purple. We did it, Clara said. Yeah. What now? Now we live. She laughed. That's it? That's your plan? That's the plan. Wake up, do the work, go to sleep. Repeat. Sounds boring. Sounds perfect. Clara moved to the window, looking out at the valley. I need to tell you something. Elijah felt tension creep into his shoulders. What? I'm scared. About this. About us. About building a future. What if we can't make it work? What if we can? She turned. You said that before. Still true. You keep focusing on what could go wrong, But what if everything goes right? What if we build a life here, grow old together, actually find happiness? That scares me more. Why?
Because I've never had it. Happiness. Real happiness. What if I don't know how? Elijah crossed to her, took her hands. Then we learned together. Same way we learned to survive. One day at a time. You make it sound simple. It's not. It'll be hard and messy and we'll probably fail at it half the time. But we'll be failing together. That's got to count for something. Claire's eyes filled with tears. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of being afraid. She kissed him then, and it wasn't tentative like before. It was certain, a choice made, a future accepted. That night they christened their new home, and for the first time in 12 years, Elijah didn't dream of ghosts. Spring turned to summer. They planted a garden, tended livestock. Marcus helped them buy, learned the rhythm of working land. It was hard labor, dawn to dusk, but satisfying in ways Elijah had forgotten. Clara thrived. She learned to cook, to preserve food, to read weather. She made friends among the mountain women, joined their quilting circles, contributed to the community. The city woman who'd arrived half-frozen was gone, replaced by someone tougher, more capable. Elijah changed too, slowly. The anger that had defined him for so long didn't disappear, but it faded. He smiled more, laughed occasionally, started seeing the mountain as something beautiful instead of just harsh. In July, he started building a music box. Clara found him in the workshop one evening, carefully etching a cylinder. "What's this one for?" she asked. "I don't know yet." "You always know." "Not this time. I needed to make something. Something that isn't about grief or apology. Something new." Clara watched him work. "What melody?" "Sarah's lullaby, the one she sang to Anna." "Are you sure?" "Yeah, it's time to remember them without it hurting. Time to let the memory be happy instead of just sad." When he finished, 3 weeks later, he wound it up. The melody filled the cabin, simple, sweet, achingly familiar. Elijah listened with tears running down his face, but they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of gratitude that he'd had those years, that he'd loved and been loved. Clara held his hand through it. When the music stopped, she said, "It's beautiful." "Yeah, it is." That fall, Marshal Cross came by with news. Theodore Harland had been indicted on multiple charges: murder, kidnapping, conspiracy. The investigation into the stagecoach attack had uncovered other crimes. He was looking at years in prison. "Thought you'd want to know," Cross said. Clara absorbed the information quietly. "Does it change anything?" "Means he can't hurt you, ever." "He couldn't anyway. Not anymore," Cross smiled. "No, I suppose he couldn't. Winter came hard, but they were ready. Stocked supplies, reinforced the cabin, settled in for the long cold. It was different this time. Elijah wasn't alone with his demons. Clara was there, and they faced the darkness together. On Christmas Eve, it started snowing, heavy, relentless. Clara worried they'd be trapped, but Elijah just built up the fire and pulled her close. "It's just weather," he said. "What if it's like before? Like the blizzard when we met? Then we survive it, like we survived everything else." They made love by the fire while snow buried the world outside. And this time, Elijah didn't think about loss. He thought about the present, about warmth and skin and breath, about being alive. The next morning dawned clear and brilliant. They stepped outside to a world transformed, everything white and new. "Beautiful," Clara said. Elijah looked at her, snow in her hair, smile on her face, eyes bright with life. "Yeah, it is." Spring came again. 1 year since the night he'd heard her scream. 1 year since he'd put down the gun and walked into the storm. They planted the garden together, working the soil that would feed them through the next winter. Hard work, but good work. The kind that built futures instead of monuments to the past. "Elijah?" Clara said during a water break. "Yeah? I'm happy. I know that's a strange thing to say after everything we've been through, but I am. Happy." "Me too." "Really? Really? I didn't think I could be again. Thought that part of me died with Sarah and Anna, but it didn't, just went dormant." "What woke it up?" "You. Screaming in a blizzard." Clara laughed. "That's the least romantic thing you've ever said."
It's true, though. You interrupted my ending, gave me a reason to write a different story. What story is that? One where I survive, where we both survive, where survival becomes living and living becomes, he struggled for the word.
Happiness? Clara offered. Yeah, that. She kissed him, tasting of spring water and earth and promise. That afternoon, Elijah walked to where his old cabin had stood. The ash had long since blown away, leaving only the stone fireplace as evidence anything had ever been there. He stood looking at it for a long time, saying a silent goodbye. To the man he'd been. To the grief that had defined him. To 12 years of waiting to die. Then he turned and walked back to his new cabin. To Clara. To the life they were building from the wreckage of everything that had come before. The mountain watched, indifferent as always, but Elijah didn't need the mountain's approval. He had something better. He had a future. Uncertain, imperfect, but his. And that was enough. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Clara told him she was pregnant. Elijah's first reaction was fear. Pure, bone-deep terror. He thought about Anna, about Sarah, about loss, about everything that could go wrong. But Clara took his face in her hands and made him look at her. I'm scared too, she said. But we don't get to live in fear. We already died once, both of us. This is our second chance. We don't waste it being afraid. What if? No what ifs. Just what is. We're having a baby. We're going to love it and protect it and do our best. That's all anyone can do. Elijah pulled her close, felt her heart beating against his chest, felt the life growing between them. Okay, he whispered. Okay. The baby came the following spring. A girl. They named her Anna Sarah, honoring the past while building the future. Elijah held his daughter and cried. For joy this time. For the impossible gift of another chance. Clara watched him from the bed, exhausted but smiling. You're going to be a good father. I was before. Didn't stop the fever. No. But you loved her. That's what matters. Love her while you have her. Don't waste time being afraid of losing her. She was right. Life was fragile, precious, temporary. The answer wasn't to hide from it. The answer was to embrace it fully, knowing it wouldn't last forever. Elijah kissed his daughter's forehead. I promise, he whispered. I promise to be here, to show up, to choose life every single day. Years passed. The cabin expanded. Anna Sarah grew strong and wild, running through the mountains like she owned them. She had Sarah's dark hair and Clara's fierce spirit. Elijah taught her to track, to shoot, to respect the wilderness. He made her a music box for her 4th birthday. She wound it up and danced, spinning in circles until she got dizzy. Just like Anna had done. Elijah watched, and for the first time the memory didn't hurt. It just existed. Part of his history. Honored, but not defining. Clara came up beside him, took his hand. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I really am. No regrets? Only one. What's that? That I waited so long, 12 years hiding in a cabin, waiting to die when I could have been living. Clara squeezed his hand. You weren't ready before, you are now. That's what matters. She was right. Everything happened when it was supposed to. He'd needed those 12 years to grieve, to process, to heal enough that he could accept help when it came screaming through a blizzard. He looked at Clara, older now, lines around her eyes, hands roughened by work, beautiful in ways that had nothing to do with youth. I love you, he said. I know. No, I mean, I don't say it enough. But I love you. You saved my life. We saved each other. That was the truth. They'd both been drowning, both been broken, but they'd found each other in the darkness and decided to fight their way toward light. It hadn't been easy. There were hard days, arguments, moments when the past threatened to swallow them both. But they kept choosing each other, kept choosing life, and somehow, impossibly, it had been enough. That night, after Anna was asleep, Elijah and Clara sat by the fire. The same fire in the same hearth, but everything different. What are you thinking about? Clara asked. That night, when I heard you scream. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't come out? If you'd ignored it? Every day. And I'm grateful I didn't.
grateful for that scream, for the storm, for every moment that led to this. Clara rested her head on his shoulder. Me too. Outside, wind moved through the pines. Inside, their daughter slept safe and warm. The music box sat on the shelf, ready to play whenever Anna wanted to dance.
Elijah closed his eyes and listened. To the wind, to Claire's breathing, to the crackle of the fire, to life. He'd spent 12 years waiting to die. And then, in one moment, everything changed. Not because he found the will to live, but because someone needed him to. That was the thing about survival he'd learned. You didn't do it alone, you did it for someone else. And in saving them, you saved yourself. Clara had needed rescue from Theodore, from the snow, from death. But Elijah had needed rescue too. From grief, from isolation, from the gun on his workbench. They'd saved each other. And in doing so, they discovered something worth living for. Not happiness exactly. Happiness was too simple, too fleeting. This was deeper. This was purpose, partnership, a reason to face each day not because you had to, but because you wanted to, because someone was counting on you, because you'd built something worth protecting, because life, for all its pain and uncertainty, was still worth living. Elijah opened his eyes and looked at his home, at Clara beside him, at the life they'd built from nothing but determination and hope. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For screaming. For refusing to give up. For teaching me how to live again." Clara smiled. "You would have figured it out eventually." "No, I wouldn't have. I'd be dead in that burned cabin, another mountain casualty. You gave me a reason to stay. You gave me a place to belong." They sat in comfortable silence as the fire burned low. Two people who'd almost died, who'd chosen instead to live, who'd discovered that survival was just the beginning. The real work came after. Building, healing, learning to trust again, to hope again, to believe that the future might be better than the past. It wasn't easy. Some days it felt impossible. But they kept trying, kept choosing each other and the life they were building together. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, they'd created something new from the ashes of everything they'd lost. Elijah stood, added wood to the fire. It caught and blazed bright, pushing back the darkness. Just like they had. Just like they would keep doing one day at a time for as long as they both lived. Because that was the secret. The thing he'd learned in the years since that scream cut through the blizzard. Life wasn't about avoiding pain. It was about facing it. About surviving the storms and building something beautiful in their wake. About choosing every single day to keep going, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. Because on the other side of that pain was this. Was warmth and love and a daughter dancing to music boxes. Was partnership and purpose and the quiet satisfaction of work well done. Was life. Messy, imperfect, precious life. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.